Hi, this is Kristen Heemstra, your college and career coach, and I want to start talking about the common application and the actual application itself. So the application, you are going to have the opportunity to fill in all kinds of data about yourself. There is, information about all of these things. A fee waiver is available. Your counselor often needs to sign this if you're planning on using that. And it's available for people who have economic distress in their family. Then you also are going to have information about family and siblings. This is important for your parents to get right because they need to know, how many people in the house are planning on going to or attending college, because that determines money and stuff like that. Then there's going to be information about your high school. And what I want to mention here, so other secondary schools are places that you've attended. So that would be other high schools. Sometimes they have things for colleges and universities, even for the first year. They'll definitely have this for transfer application, but even for the first year. And so if you took any classes at UNC, sometimes kids will take a math class or two there, or wherever, you can put those down. They're going to want you to put your grades in, which is it's a lovely experience for you to have. And your most recent classes, future plans, all this information they're putting. And you don't have to, how can I put this? Put your dream down. You don't have to be practical about it. If you think you might want to go on and earn a doctorate, put that down. They're not going to come back and check and say, did you do what you said? The answer is no, they're not. And then they're going to ask you about testing. Now, the testing is one of the first things they're going to see when they look and read your application. They're going to see it before. You can see they see testing, before activities and writing. So they see your grades first, then your testing, then your activities and your writing. So you want your grades obviously to be super strong, but you also want your testing to be super strong. And I just want to show you what it looks like. So you'll be able to see, I just threw some numbers in here, a composite score, and then kind of your SAT, you can put that in there. There's also a place to put your AP and IB scores, which you want to do as well. And you can preview this at any time, and you can do testing tutorials, so take advantage of that. The activities are super important, in my opinion, because you're going to be against, in a lot of schools, you're against similar candidates. So your activities is where you stand out. With the activities, you don't have a lot of room to write. So you want your activities to have a lot of punch in them. So use each of those words or each of the characters that you have and do your best to talk about how you were involved. You don't have to explain the activity itself. Like if you're a Boy Scout, you don't have to put Boy Scouts of America as an organization for young men. You don't have to put any of that. You put your title and then you put what you did. Led backpacking trips up the Himalayas or, whatever. So do take advantage of every single word you can with those. And then finally, the writing. So with the writing, as I mentioned before, I picked two colleges, but the Common App essay are these are really where kids get a little bit of anxiety. And it's 650 words. That's your limit, not your goal. So if you can get it done before 650 and have a great essay, don't worry about extending it out. You're going to save the reader some time. But if you need all 650 words, then by all means take them. And then you can see what these questions are. Now, these are the questions they're using for 2017-18. They haven't released. Usually they release the new questions around August. They're going to be of the same ilk. They're not going to be radically different. One's a background question. One's a question about obstacles. One's a belief idea that changed, an intellectual research query, ethical dilemma that you could change or, is important to you, an accomplishment or realization that sparked a period of growth, a topic you find so engaging in. And then there's this last wild card one, which is an essay topic of your choice. This is great. If you have something you really want to talk about, that's wonderful because the readers are going to be reading variations of all of these. And sometimes it's a refreshing thing to have something that's not in this list at all. The thing to keep in mind when you're doing these as well is to make sure to answer the prompt. I read a lot of essays, and a lot of the essays are actually better suited for the last topic because the writer says, I want to talk about lessons learned from obstacles, and then we end up on a very different path, or they don't even talk about the obstacle. So make sure when you do your essay that you are responding to the prompt. It seems so obvious, but you would really be surprised how many students kind of miss that mark. Then they're going to ask you about the disciplinary history. Now, this can be cause for a lot of anxiety. It doesn't need to be. A school, typically, they're not, where you're going to find them really taking pause in an application is if you have a student who's bringing in weapons or a student who has multiple offenses around drug distribution or just drug distribution, period. Those are really going to give a school pause about bringing the student into their student body. A drinking violation, I've seen students get in just fine with a single episode like that. Most colleges are not wanting to know about detentions. They do want to know about suspensions. So if you have been suspended, you'll be asked about that, and make sure you talk about what you learned from the experience. And then they're going to want to know if you've been convicted of anything, if you've been in the court system. Then they have this additional information. Now, a lot of things happen in people's lives. So you can use this to talk about a few different things. I've seen people use it to talk about ADD, OCD. If you want to share that with the school, that's one way you could do that. Sometimes the parents are in the middle of a divorce. Sometimes one of the parents is deceased or dies during the student's high school years. There's lots of things that you can use this space to do. You do not need to do it in your personal essay if you don't want to. However, if you want to, go ahead and do it for that way. But do know that there is a space for you to talk about other things that you want to talk about in this. So that's good. And then the last thing you're going to see is completed grades. And this is often, so your transcript's going to have all that information. So that will be good. The financial aid piece also has information about financial aid and things like that. So, and again, the FAFSA, which we've talked about, the CSS financial aid profile, which Clark talks about, those are good as well. So welcome to the Common Application. If you end up being on a different application, like the consortium application, it's going to be very similar. Private schools or some schools have their own and they don't have all this. In order to pull off a full-on Common App, you've got to have readers. And if you have readers, you have to delegate people who have time. Not every school has that ability. So they're not going to use the Common App if they don't. And some schools have very specific things like Georgetown they want you to talk about. So that's some information about the Common Application. Good luck.